Welcome to this episode of Beachside Chats. I'm your host, John W. Coffey, and thank you for watching. 2 months ago, we apologize for not having an episode last month, but this month is extra special. I'd like to introduce you to our very special guest host, J.W. Coffey, my alter ego. J.W., introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Why, thank you, John, for having me. You know, we go back way far. No accent? Okay. We go back way far, me and Mr. Coffey, back 30 years ago when he was just a budget analyst in the city of College Station, Texas, and he couldn't get a spreadsheet to balance. And I popped in his head and said, "Doofus, you got the summation formula wrong," and we've been best buds ever since. We've been in Georgia, different places in Florida. We was over in Iraq and Afghanistan. I kind of kept my head low down over there because I didn't know what they'd think of alter egos in those places. But thank you for having me, John.
J.W., time doesn't permit us to do a deep dive into finances and budget, but please summarize for our viewers how the city's budget and spending process works.
That is a great question, John. Well, folks in IHB should realize that the city, under John's leadership, takes a very proactive 5-year approach to budgeting and finances. We use what we call a financial model and a capital improvement plan, where we forecast 5 years of revenue and expenditures to be able to predict what projects we can afford in the future and what projects we can't afford, helping elected officials and residents prioritize projects in the future. On an annual basis, the budget process is a 10-month process that you and I start in the month of December, updating spreadsheets that the city council kicks off in usually the month of February with a strategic workshop where they tell staff what their priorities for the upcoming year is, followed up by a review of the 5-year finances and planned projects in April, followed up by the detailed proposed budget being submitted to them in the end of July. In August, there's a workshop where the city council reviews the proposed budget, and then they have 2 public hearings in the month of September to adopt the new tax rate and the proposed budget. And then it all starts again 2 months later. That's the IHB side of it. The state of Florida has guidelines, rules, and restrictions on how the process works, which we follow very closely. And cities only can have certain revenue streams that the state allows us to. The city just can't decide one day we're going to have a state income tax or a city sales tax like other states have. Sadly, residents don't usually participate in this 10-month process, but show up in the month of September seeking to give their input when the budget is largely wrapped up and it's within state deadlines of being adopted by the end of September. On the spending side, the city and state have regulations on how we spend our money. City's regulations deal with the city manager, Mr. Coffey, has $40,000 spending authority. Anything above that has to be advertised twice in the local newspaper and bids collected and taken to the city council for them to award contracts. The state has specific rules on engineering projects, of which ones have to be advertised. Within the city side, below that $40,000 limit, there's informal rules that department directors follow of when they can go with just one bid, which is usually very low amounts. And when you get two informal quotes, two formal quotes. One of the challenges IHB, like other cities, face is vendors who don't get award of contracts start to not want to give second and third bids. Additionally, IHB has a history of lean operations and healthy reserves. By lean operations, you know, John, I mean that we don't have as many employees as other cities nearby. There's a city that we won't name their name. They have 5 people that do the work of you and Mr. Covert. Part of that is how the city has kept its tax rates so low compared to other cities. Another hallmark of IHB, a source of pride, is that we are a debt-free city and we have very healthy financial reserves. The city has over 100% of a year's operating reserves in the bank, earning interest. That also helps keep the tax rate low and allows us to address emergencies or downturns in the economy without being forced to jack tax rates the next year.
JW, you're not only good looking, but that's a smart answer you gave our folks. Following up, JW, how does the city compare to other cities in Florida and throughout the country and states when it comes to their budgeting and spending?
That is another great question, John. Most folks who know Mr. Coffee and indirectly know me know we like to eat. And we use a pizza pie analogy in describing how IHB is similar and different to other cities. IHB is a built-out city that doesn't have a lot of new growth. So using that pie analogy, that pie is the same size as if you're ordering it from your favorite pizza joint. That same large pepperoni is going to come in the same size every Friday when you order it. It's never going to get bigger. The price will go up over time, but it'll never get bigger. Cities that are growing, like West Melbourne, Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville, their pies are growing larger. So they have the ability to use the valuations of the new parts of the city to lower their tax rate faster than IHB can lower its tax rate. So if you think about the pizza analogy, if you're in a growing city, you order that medium pizza, but it comes in 16 inches one week, and next week it's 16 and a half, it's 17 inches, 18 inches. So comparing IHB's annual tax changes to other cities is not the fairest comparison. Additionally, IHB, like other cities in Florida, have limited revenue sources. I previously mentioned how the state limits what revenue sources we have, but compared to growing cities again, IHB has fewer revenue sources than they do. Larger cities have significant money in impact fees from new development. City of Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville, they have water and sewer rates, sewer utilities that they get revenue from. So when folks want to compare the percent of property taxes of all city revenues, you have to be careful what you're comparing. If you're comparing the entire city budget, some cities have a smaller percentage of property tax revenue compared to IHB because they have other sources. But if you compare just general fund revenue, that's the discretionary funds each city has, they're usually well over 50%. You know, IHB, the chart above my shoulder, which is the current year's general fund revenue sources, you'll see that property taxes account for 64% of our annual income. And that's a rather constant number. If you were to put up the city of Melbourne's citywide revenue sources, it might be 25% because they get impact fees and they get charges for water and sewer. They get federal pass-through money for low-income housing, redevelopment, things like that. So when you hear people talk about cities' revenues, specifically property taxes, remember, every city is different, and there is a big difference between built-out cities like IHB and growing cities like Melbourne and Palm Bay. Lastly, if you come from other states like Virginia or Tennessee, the school budget can be a component of the city's budget. Here in Florida, all 67 counties have independent school districts that are completely separate from municipal budgets. So if you start comparing IHB's budget to cities of similar sizes in other states, you might find vast differences, but if you look into it, you might find a school budget buried within a municipal budget.
Another great answer, JW. Next, JW, please give a little explanation of how property taxes factor into the city's budget and some of the complexities of the situation.
As we mentioned, we get 65% of our general fund revenue from property taxes. Politicians, especially statewide politicians, often clump in all those other revenue sources we previously talked into discussion of property taxes. On the flip side of the property taxes is the issue of where property taxes and other general fund monies go. The chart that you see above my shoulder is the current year's breakout of where money goes to the various departments. You'll see that the police department is our largest department. And if you add up the fire department, the police department, and the part of the information technology department that deals with public safety, you're well over 50% of every dollar the city spends is on public safety. And that is a core responsibility of the city. The chart that you see in the background, capital outlay is 20%. Reason it's 20% instead of around 10% most years is we have $1 million budgeted for the first half of the fire annex project. So those percentages can shift year to year if there is a big capital project. Going back to directly to discuss property taxes, there's a component of property tax discussion that I think often gets lost on people. It's how the state over the last 40 years has made changes to how cities establish tax rates and how homes are valued by the property appraiser at the county level. We all know Save Our Homes has a cap on the annual growth of taxable valuation. There's a certain person I know well. He's lived in his home for over 40 years. He's had Save Our Homes cap since the day it started in the 90s. He has a home that's worth about $526,000 of taxable value, meaning he's got $50,000 homestead exemption on top of that. Last year, he paid $459 in city taxes. Let's assume there's his house to his right is the exact same house. And somebody moved in out of state 3 years ago and declared their homestead. That person with 3 years homestead on the same value house paid the city approximately $2,400 in taxes. Now let's go down one more house on that street. It's a rental home that an out-of-state person owns and rents out on an annual basis to someone who calls IHB home. That house pays $2,900 in taxes. Now, a lot of people say it's good that the long-term resident doesn't pay that much. But from a service delivery perspective, all three homes require the same streets to be paved. They all enjoy police protection, fire emergency response. They all are treated equally, but one pays almost 6 times as much as the other. So if the pie is not growing, as in our case with property taxes, and discretionary revenue sources must grow, or property taxes have to slowly go up, or services decline. That can be debated, but that is the essence of how John and I put the budget together, of trying to minimize the millage rate as much as possible, but meeting the service demands expected by the city council and by the residents who vote them into office.
Well, thank you for watching this episode of Beachside Chats. Please do not forget our America 250 celebration coming up on July 30th. We'll have a patriotic golf cart parade, followed by a celebration with music and food trucks in Gleason Park starting at 5:30. Next month, we'll have another special guest. This is our new communications manager, Hillary Fuller, who will be with us to explain new initiatives we have on how we plan to communicate better with you, our residents and visitors. Thank you for watching, and together IHB cannot fail.